What's up everybody, and thank you for joining me for another video. Conan Exiles is receiving a lot of changes in the Age of War Chapter 2, and I want to highlight the top 10 changes that I think are going to change the way that you experience the Exiled Lands and the Isle of Siptah.
Number 10.
The Library of Esoteric Artifacts on the Exiled Lands and the Void Forge Library on the Isle of Siptah have been changed to give you a specific recipe in a specific order. So you're no longer going to get a random recipe, and the game is going to look at whatever recipes you already have, and it will not give you those recipes. So at some point you will reach the end, and it will tell you that you can no longer turn in a fragment of power for a recipe. This is a nice change. It takes a lot of the RNG out of the game, and it removes any instance where you would waste a fragment of power on a recipe that you've already obtained.
Number 9.
There's been major changes to the protection bubble and the avatars that you get from the different shrines that are in the game. The protection bubbles are completely gone. They've taken those completely out of the game, and you can no longer summon a protection bubble for your base. Avatars have also gotten a change to the way that they function. They now last for 10 minutes, but they do 10 times less damage. You can also exit an avatar at any point in time should you want to by pressing the crouch key.
Number 8.
There's been a massive loot revamp in the Exiled Lands and the Isle of Siptah, both in the inventory of your foes and in the chests that you'll find around the map. In most cases, you'll find that the loot makes sense for the area that you're in, and the loot that's dropping off of the enemies is normally more what you would expect. So it may be a weapon that they're carrying or a piece of armor that they're wearing. There are some places that you can go if you know what you're looking for in order to get a leg up on the competition and help fast track you through some gear levels. If you're looking for more tips, tricks, guides, and news for Conan Exiles, I recommend subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out when I upload that next video.
Number 7.
Talking more about loot, but focusing in mainly on treasures that you're going to find around the map. There have been new treasures added to the Exiled Lands and the Isle of Siptah. Keep your eye out for these new treasures while you're exploring so that you can bring those back and continue to fill your coffer. Most of the treasures that I found are carryable items in your inventory, so I think that's a really good thing. More treasures that we can pick up and store in our inventory. Additionally, the large carryable treasures have had an increase to their value, so they are actually worth picking up and bringing back to your base, as they have a total value of 5,000. Now remember that you can carry these through a teleporter, so it's a good idea to have a teleporter around your base and around the areas where you're going to find these, so that it makes it easier for you to bring them back to your base. Although I would recommend being careful when you bring these back, because it is a large boost to your purge level. So when you place one of these guys, it's a lot of money that goes into your value, and it really increases the threat level of your purge.
Number 6.
Legendary chests are gone. Well, at least the ones that you're used to seeing near the world bosses in the Exiled Lands and the Isle of Siptah. Where you're going to find the legendary chests now is at the end of dungeons. All the dungeons seem to have multiple legendary chests at the end of the dungeons for you to open. So you are going to want to farm the bosses around the Exiled Lands to retrieve a key from them. However, you're going to save that key and use it in the dungeons the next time that you run them. The lowest amount of legendary chests I've seen at the end of the dungeon happens to be in the dregs, and it has 3 chests. Some of the dungeons, like the Warmaker dungeon, actually have 7 different chests in it for you to open. So you're going to want to stock up on keys for those dungeon runs so that you can maximize how many legendaries you're pulling out of there at one point in time. And I really think that Funcom should make a change to skeleton keys so that they stack, so you don't have a bunch of these keys clogging up your inventory. They could stack to 10 or 20 pretty easily, and I think that would really help with the amount of storage space needed for all the keys that we're going to use in these dungeons. Before I get to my top 5, I want to tell you about Epidemic Sound. I use them for all my sound needs, from music tracks to sound effects. They have a huge library for all your audio needs, and you never have to worry about copyright. If you've been looking to take your videos to the next level with music and sound effects, Epidemic Sound could be exactly what you're looking for. Use the link in the description of this video and get your first month free.
Number 5.
I'm going to cover a couple of changes here as I break open this star metal node. The first thing that you'll notice is when you throw an orb, it explodes on impact. You're no longer going to see those orbs bouncing around and going all over the place before exploding. This is a really good quality of life change, and I like the fact that I know exactly where that orb is going to explode, and that's wherever it lands. The other change that's happened has been to the tools that are not able to harvest certain resources. The only resource that I can think of off the top of my head right now that cannot be harvested with every type of pick is star metal, so that's why I'm showing it to you here. You can see that none of the lower tier picks are doing any damage to the star metal, so you no longer have to worry about hitting a star metal node and having it disappear without gaining any of the resources. So any tool that isn't high enough level isn't going to damage a resource, so you're not going to end up wasting those resources by using a tool that's too low of a level to cause damage to it.
Number 4.
Dungeons have received a fresh coat of paint. In addition to the changes to the loot system and the things that you'll find in the chests and the inventory of the bosses and different enemies that you'll fight in the dungeons, many dungeons have received either more enemies or they've received traps with this new update. Some dungeons have changed more than others, but it's nice to see that they've received this run through where they almost feel like they've been revamped. It does revitalize the idea of going through a dungeon and not knowing what to expect. Now, obviously, this isn't going to last forever, it's just a change now, and down the road you're going to feel like you've mastered the changes to the dungeons. But it's nice to see this coming from Funcom. It's a bit of a quality of life update and a bit of new content as well. I know that in the Exiled Lands, there are new enemies there now that were only on SIPTA before, so it's a lot of fun to see that happening with the game. And I know I mentioned it earlier on in the video, but I'll mention it again while we're covering dungeons. Now you need to come into the dungeons in order to get legendaries. And you're going to get a lot of stuff when you're in certain dungeons. Some bosses still drop legendaries, and some of the dungeons have a ton of legendary chests. So, as you're progressing through and playing, there's another reason to come back and check out these different dungeons.
Number 3.
There have been some pretty major changes that have come to combat. Even if they don't sound like a big deal on paper, they are quite a big deal once you get into the game and actually start playing it. One of the biggest changes is that they've removed hyper armor. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to stagger everything in the Exiled Lands. Some bosses still don't stagger, so it would appear like they still have hyper armor, even though that's a different mechanic that you're not able to stagger certain bosses. And the one thing that I can say about this change is you're really not going to understand what that means until you actually get hands-on and play the game with this update. You're also now able to rotate your character while you're at the beginning part of your attack. Once your attack starts the damage process, then it's not going to allow you to rotate anymore, but this will allow you to make more precise hits on targets if they're sidestepping or they are dodging out of the way. The other thing that I've noticed with a lot of the enemies is that they are going to perform full combos. Where they may have stopped short previously, now it appears that most, if not all, enemies are trying to perform a full combo. So you're going to have to work on your timing when going into some of these engagements.
Number 2.
Follower thralls now have precision placement. And what I mean by that is that you can now place thralls to guard specific doors. There are slots that you can slot them into next to doors and gates so that they will protect that specific spot. Not only are they going to stand there, but they will return to that location. Now, those specific spots are only on the outsides of doors and gates. You cannot place them on the insides of doors and gates. There is no spot to place them on the inside of doors and gates. So it's very important when you set your door and your gate that you understand the rotation of that door. Additionally, they will not stand at the door if you don't actually have a door on it. So the door is what makes these slots show up. So if you just have an open doorway, those locations to place those thralls are not going to show up. They can actually do emotes in that location as well, so if you want them leaning up against the wall or juggling, you are more than capable of doing that as long as the emote is thrall friendly. Before I reveal the number one thing that is going to change the way you play Conan Exiles, go ahead and whack that like button, show your support for this video.
Number 1.
Arguably, the biggest changes are the ones that are coming to the Purge. You see, the Purge is now an opt-in system. You no longer have to fill a Purge meter and wait for the Purge to attack you. You can actually just have Purge after Purge after Purge if you'd like to do so. It's all connected to the treasure coffer, and when you have enough loot in your coffer, you can proclaim that wealth. When you do so, the Purge will target your base. And the difficulty of the Purge is decided multiple ways. Most importantly, it's decided based on the amount of loot that you have in your coffer. Secondarily, it's decided by how many clan members you have online, and then it's also going to look at how many thralls you currently have. All of those things are going to play a factor in the difficulty of the Purge coming to your base. Now, unlike Purges before, these guys are only after your treasure. So depending on how much treasure you have, the more ferocious the Purge will be in hopes of them stealing that treasure from you. And there are a lot of new check systems put in place to make sure that the Purge doesn't act abnormally. One of those check systems is to make sure that it has a place to spawn a forward operating base. That's where all of the enemies are going to spawn, and they're going to attack your base from that location. If at any point in time your coffer is no longer available for the Purge to reach, the Purge will decide that you were defeated and it will vacate the area. Now, there are some instances where you're going to be built in a way that the Purge can't reach your coffer. If you run into the issue where you are trying to have a Purge attack and it keeps telling you that it cannot reach your coffer, my recommendation is to make subtle changes to your base or to your coffer placement in order to rectify those issues and allow the Purge to come to your base. You no longer need to worry about where you're built on the map. The Purge in the Frozen North is going to be the same as the Purge in the Noob River. It's all going to depend on the value in your coffer. So you don't have to look at the Purge maps any longer to figure out what type of Purge is actually going to come. You're also not going to get any loot from the enemies that you defeat in the Purge. You have to complete the Purge and defeat the final boss in order to get any loot. Additionally, you won't get thralls from the Purge either unless you defeat the Purge. You cannot knock out the NPCs that are coming in the waves. The only way to get thralls from the Purge is going to be from the cages in the forward operating base, and the only way to get the keys for those cages is to kill the Stygian commander that challenges you once you've repelled enough waves of the Purge. And I'll be posting more in-depth guides about the Purge in the near future, so keep an eye out for those. Don't forget to whack the like button on your way out, and let me know in the comment section below which one of these changes is your favorite. I'd like to thank all my YouTube members for your continued support. Y'all are absolute legends. If you'd like to become a legend, there's a button that says join on this page. Click that for details. There's 2 videos on the screen. Click one of those to watch next, and I'll meet you over there.